Joining me now is the senior correspondent at the Financial Review, Aaron Patrick, and media writer at The Australian, Sophie Elsworth. Soph, a week is a long time in politics, and what do you make of the Victorian Treasurer's remarks today, laying the blame of this latest outbreak in Melbourne squarely at the feet of the federal government?
Well, Jenna, I was just shocked to hear what was coming out of the Treasurer's mouth at the press conference today. I'm one of the lucky ones, Jenna. I escaped Victoria, my hometown. I fled out of there on Thursday to get away from lockdown. The thought of going through another lockdown, a fourth lockdown, but the audacity of Tim Pallas to point the finger at the federal government, I was just blown away by this. I mean, Victoria has absolutely stuffed up the handling of the pandemic over and over again. We've got a disastrous contact tracing system. Our hotel quarantine facilities haven't been up to scratch. And now we're putting out our hand for more money. And I am actually pleased the federal government has said no, because we should be questioning why we're constantly asking the feds for money when it's Victoria's muck-ups that have got us in this place in the first instance.
Yeah. Aaron, you generally have a pretty overarching view on these things. You were down in Melbourne and attended a couple of press conferences. What do you think the vibe is? Do you think it's the feds to blame, or do you think this finger pointing is going to tire pretty quickly in the general community?
Yeah, Jenna, that's a really fascinating issue. What is kind of impressive about the Victorian government is they're so good at deflecting blame to Canberra. So when something goes wrong, they'll stand up and I guess they'll huff and puff and they'll say, this is a disgrace what the federal government's doing. And in a political sense, I think it's quite effective. I think it creates a splash. It creates a sense amongst Victorians who are clearly feeling pretty sensitive, and a lot of them probably pretty upset that someone else is to blame. Because the Victorians, as far as I can tell, really want to believe that their government's doing the right thing by them, even though they take much stronger measures than other states when these kind of outbreaks happen. And the $250 million that the states, the Victorian government are putting up, possibly is not going to touch the sides. You know, the Australian Industry Group reckons the lockdown's going to cost $2.5 billion.
Yeah, it's crazy what is going on over there, and so lucky that you did escape. Health Minister Greg Hunt today reiterated that the COVID vaccination rollout is a consent-based program.
The vaccination program is a consent-based program, and we would very strongly encourage the residents or where families are making decisions or other guardians are making decisions on their behalf to provide that consent.
Now, Sophie, I don't want to sound like I'm an Adolf Huxley fan or anything like that, but do you think it's time for it to become mandatory in some instances?
Look, Jenna, I think there's a lot of people out there who are concerned about the vaccine. I know friends close to me who are much older than me are very concerned about, reports of blood clotting and issues with it. I do not think it should be compulsory. I think people have the right to choose to get it. Of course, there's, strong evidence that we should be getting it, but I think it is down to choice, and there is not a lot of incentive out there at the moment to get it. I mean, we've heard that we may not have the borders open even if we are all vaccinated, so people are probably scratching their heads. And the other thing down in Victoria, if you do try and get it, you are roadblocked at every opportunity. We've got, centres where you get the vaccine, you can't get in. You ring the hotline, you can't get through. I mean, it's an absolute shambles. And also the federal government has been slow in rolling this out, and that cannot be ignored either.
Yeah, Aaron, what do you think? Mandatory in some instances? There was talk in WA that the Premier, Mark McGowan, was considering making it mandatory for people that work in things like hotel quarantine. Do you think that's overstepping the mark?
Well, look, the problem is, Jenna, if you make it mandatory, you're going to have a great deal of, I think, civil disturbance. You look, even for child vaccination, there's hot spots of resistance, even in eastern suburbs of Sydney, up say 5, 7 or 8%. So there's always a hardcore group of people who will possibly go to jail or accept fines rather than get vaccinated. And then you've got a larger group, I don't know, 30%, who are just hesitant about it. And in a way, even though clearly it's to the benefit of society if everyone gets vaccinated, it's rational behaviour by those who won't. Because the risk of getting COVID or dying from COVID in Australia is incredibly low. And there is a very, very low chance of also suffering illness from the vaccine. So people are just making a rational decision. So really, there's one way to get people to vaccinate, which is to let COVID back into the community. And of course, that's going to happen. So I think we had 5 cases in Victoria today. So after the federal election, eventually they're going to have to open the borders and COVID's coming back. And then everyone, a lot of people who are hesitant getting vaccines are going to sign up and get the jab.
Yeah, I think you're definitely on the money there. Now, guys, I've got to pivot away and focus on France. We can't go there, but we can definitely watch the French Open on the telly. Ash Barty won't be following Naomi Osaka's lead at the Roland Garros because she'll be boycotting media appearances.
Press is kind of part of the job. We know what we sign up for as professional tennis players, and I can't really comment on what Naomi's feeling or on her decisions that she makes. But at times, press conferences are hard, of course, but it's also not something that bothers me. I've never had problems answering questions or being completely honest with you guys. It's not something that's ever fazed me too much.
Our golden girl there, it said she's in the hunt for her second win at Roland Garros, and she said that press conferences are not something that bothers her, but Osaka copped a huge amount of backlash for her decision which she made over the weekend. So what do you think? Is it wise or wily for the athlete to come out and say, I ain't doing press and you can find me, and hopefully the money will go to a cause that will help with the mental health of other athletes?
Oh, Jenna, I think it's absolutely pathetic. I think she should be doing the press conferences. That is why people tune in. They love to hear what players have to say after the game. They get paid an absolute fortune. This is part of their requirement. And quite frankly, I think it's utterly pathetic and she should be made to do it.
Aaron, what do you think? She said she's willing to cop the $20,000 odd fine for it. Do you think that she's just taking the easy route, or should we actually start being more considerate about athletes' mental health at the top level?
Well, Jen, I'm really wary of contradicting a media reporter because they're powerful people in our industry. And
Indeed.
and I guess I'm wary of speaking against my own industry. But in this case, I'm actually on Osaka's side. Look, I think it's professional sports people make their money and they build their brand up, obviously, through media coverage. But every person has a choice. And if the individual doesn't want to give press conferences, as regrettable as that is for the media, I think they're entitled to do that. What you're going to have here is the press are going to bully her. They're going to bully her and attack her for not giving them what they want. They're going to act in their own interests. And that's how the press work, and that's how it's always worked. And professional sports people are smart enough to understand that they're playing on the court, but they're also playing in the field of public opinion. So you do not want to get the media offside, and that's what she has done here. So it's probably not going to end up well for her, but it's certainly a legitimate choice for her to make.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting watching how the media responds to that. Aaron, one final question for you. Michael Daly resurrecting himself as being the opposition leader. What do you make of that? Do you think he'll succeed?
Well, look, someone was saying on social media today that Michael Daly has spent 2 years, I think, saying absolutely nothing. And now he wants to be leader of the Labor Party again after I think he was one of the shortest serving leaders of the Labor Party in its New South Wales history. Look, he does seem a very decent guy. Covered him on the last election campaign, hardworking. He did bomb pretty badly. He sort of miscalculated on the Sydney Stadium and he thought he was on a winner there. It didn't work out for him. I personally would be surprised if they went back to him because he failed so badly at the last election. But who knows? The New South Wales Labor Party is in such dire states after its terrible drubbing in Upper Hunter that its behaviour is going to be very unpredictable, and its path to power looks pretty difficult given how powerful and how popular Gladys Berejiklian is.
Indeed. As I said at the top of our little get-together, a week is a long time in politics, and I look forward to watching you both have your say in each of your respective papers this week. Sophie Elsworth, media writer for The Australian, and Aaron Patrick, he is a contributor and senior correspondent for the Financial Review. Thanks for your time, guys.
Thanks, Jenna.
Good night.